Hey guys, how's it going? Crimson Red here, bringing you my first Game of the Year 2013 video. Now for this one, we're going with the lows. Now, I don't want to say worst game because there's so many different variations on that. I mean, I could say the Smurfs 2 is my worst game of 2013. Instead, I'm going with something we all feel throughout the year, most disappointing game. These are the games that were marketed big, you get them in your console, and they just suck. I'm talking about Fable with Peter Molyneux saying you could get syphilis from whores across the world and then marry them and then turn them into your mother, and it just never ever lives up to the hype. Now I want to say first off, these are just my opinions. You could agree with them if you'd like, you could disagree with them. So let's get started with my top 5 most disappointing games of 2013. The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds, easily my most controversial pick of this list. I should preface this by starting out a little bit backstory about myself and Nintendo. My favorite Super Nintendo game of all time, like a lot of people, is A Link to the Past, The Legend of Zelda. Since the Super Nintendo, I have not really been a Nintendo fan. I feel that they are very good at reiterating the same concept and the same story over and over again. So when the GameCube came out, I kinda didn't gravitate towards it. And then when the Nintendo Wii, same thing. I didn't gravitate towards it. There was nothing new, the same old Mario, the same old Link. But for some reason, when A Link Between Worlds was announced, I got very, very excited when they started releasing information about how it's going to be a direct sequel to A Link to the Past. I got super excited. And every trailer they sent out, I was eating it up. Now here's the problem. I get the game and you put it in, and unfortunately it's short, it's predictable, and every single scenario is so clearly laid out that it's just not exciting. Now do not take what I'm saying as this is a poor game. The main problem is it's a complete lack of heart. There's no real defining moment, nor memorable villains or characters, and there's really no true new items that make their mark that you remember for the Zelda series. I mean, think how cool the bomb is, or the boomerang, or the Master Sword. What has been introduced to A Link Between Worlds that you're going to remember and want to play for future games? There's nothing. But out of all of that, I could overlook the same weapons, I could overlook the same gameplay, I could overlook depending so much on its predecessor to make the future. The big thing for A Link Between Worlds is the villain. Now, I won't go into spoilers, but Yuga, he's basically a wizard, and he has the power to morph himself and others into paintings. And that's the whole gimmick of the game. He's obsessed with perfection, and he loves everything to be beautiful. But that's really about it. He's just not good or memorable. He's just so bland and one note. Ganon and all these other villains of the past spin-offs have so much depth, and you could just... he's just boring. He's just so stupid and one note. I mean, with a mediocre story at best, routine gameplay, and a villain that is more one-dimensional than Link flat on a wall, The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds is just very disappointing. Not enough to earn a number 1 slot, but definitely deserves to be on the list. Holy shit. What can you say about Aliens Colonial Marines? I purchased this game for fun. That's not true. I actually played this game because I was dared to on our website. Now, going into it, I knew very little about the game except that it had a disastrous development cycle. When I loaded it up, you could obviously see why. The game doesn't necessarily feel rushed when you look at it. Even looking at the trailer above, you could tell how beautiful the concept of it could be. There's only one problem. It's fucking awful. It's just really bad. Like, quite possibly the most broken game of last generation. Now, Why would you say is this disappointing for me? Because I never played it. Well, I am a very big fan of James Cameron. I wasn't a huge fan of the first Alien movie. I actually didn't know who Ridley Scott was when it first came out, but I always knew who James Cameron was. And I saw Aliens. And, retroactively have seen the other films. Now, when other Aliens games come out, they've always been like a big, big draw to what I love about gaming. I mean, Aliens vs. Predator, just the concept and how different it felt from everything is why I wanted to play it. So, Aliens Colonial Marine comes out, it's going to be more hardcore, kind of gritty. Yeah, we're taking Call of Duty, we're combining aliens and everything you love, and multiplayer. Yeah, motherfucker, we got it. We might have screwed up with Duke Nukem Forever, but Gearbox, we're back. We got it. Borderlands 2 isn't going to be the only game we're known for. And guess what? At the end of the day, you're only known for Borderlands 2, because Aliens Colonial Marine is a glitchy piece of shit. It is not only disappointing because of the branding is so strong, it's disappointing for everything. Coming from a developer known for producing first-person shooters, it's just unbelievable how broken it is. The guns don't feel good. The character design is bland. I mean, everything about this game is shit. If you ever want to have some fun, seriously, don't look up gameplay. Just go to YouTube, look up some game glitches, and have yourself a blast. 30 minutes of watching that is more rewarding than anything you'll ever see here. Aliens Colonial Marines is an abomination to the Aliens franchise. Dead Space 3 is a unique experience for me. I went into it already knowing that I wasn't going to like it as much as the other two. However, there was just one main feature that kept drawing me in. The idea of busting up necromorphs with my own customizable weapons. I thought this was a nice touch, as other games like Call of Duty and the like have introduced a perk system and customizing your weapons. So I thought, what better than to take my plasma cutter, strap a couple rockets to it, maybe throw in a razor blade or chainsaw or who knows what they're going to throw at me, and slice some limbs. Now, when that actually was implemented in the game, it was quite well done. There was one problem. It was so microtransaction heavy that I just couldn't get into it. It's a situation where you're paying for a game that's already $60, and then they're constantly reminding you, hey, you could do better, all you have to do is pay us $1. Now, I am not against microtransactions in general, I'm against microtransactions when I've already paid for a $60 game. Make those parts accessible in there. Now, besides for that feature being disappointing, the game as a whole was disappointing. The idea of the co-op partner, while smart and allows for a multiplayer experience, completely eliminates any sort of fear you may have had. I actually completed Dead Space 3 twice. The first time I beat it by myself, and the second time I beat it with a friend. Now, the only main feature difference between them was you get to see things from the other character's perspective. But overall, a co-op partner actually took away from that experience. In Dead Space 1 and 2, you were Isaac, you were alone, you were afraid, quote unquote. You were afraid of what was around the corner. You weren't part of a squad. You were a lone engineer using the weapons you had around you to defend yourself. Dead Space 3 fundamentally throws that out and puts you in an environment that is so fucking well lit. Dead Space 1 and 2 is pure blackness. That's what it's known for. It made my HD TV sing with how black those blacks were. Dead Space 3, again, trying to introduce some new features, makes mostly snow-based, and you're outside, and there's not really any room to be scary in the snow when you could see the black necromorphs pop out and run at you. It just took away too much from what Dead Space was and tried to replace it with more generic, user-friendly crap. And when you're in a niche market like horror, it's very, very, very tricky. Did they nail it? Absolutely not. The cream of the crop is the story. Again, I promise no spoilers for this list. Let's just say the story does not live up to the Dead Space experience that you had in 2. Dead Space 2 is a prime rib, it's a filet mignon, it's very trimmed and direct, and you're eating the best of the best. Dead Space 3, you're eating those trimmings, and it's just not enough to have a sufficient meal. Very disappointing. Resident Evil Giraffe. Now, I have to preface this right from the beginning to let everyone know I am a huge Resident Evil fan. Ever since I was a little kid, Resident Evil always scared the shit out of me. And let me rephrase that here. Scared the shit out of me. Not was the best action game, but it was terrifying. This is something that Capcom has completely abandoned in Resident Evil 6. And unfortunately, it's the result of a long transition over the result of about 4 games. Initially, in Resident Evil, it was all about B-Camp and kind of the feeling of isolation and running out of ammo and unraveling a story that may not be the best, but at least was decent. And then it started to hit the uber mainstream and they made a movie about it. This was the beginning of the end. The movie, good, bad, it's up to you. I'm not going to discuss that. But what it did was it influenced Capcom to try and capitalize on the action-centric components of that film. From there, you got Resident Evil 4, which arguably is the best or worst thing to ever happen to the series. I'm not going to say that, but I will say that it focused more on action than horror. And then 5 was a continuation, and unfortunately 6 is the end result. The one thing about 6 that I can't ignore is if you're going to take a series and abandon its initial offering and change the genre, you better fucking make sure that the new genre that you're doing, you nail the controls. Resident Evil Giraffe, the controls are just not tight enough and not responsive enough to be a solid action game. If anything, it's probably worse than the initial tank controls in the fucking PlayStation games. Even the radio menus are designed poorly. A big plus is that you actually have the 3 different campaigns. The problem comes into actually playing them. Leon's is passable, Jax is also passable. Both make references to old Resident Evil and they try and be scary at points. The big problem is Chris's, which is pure action, and it just highlights bad the game's gotten. Another thing, and I know a lot of people are going to get on me with this, but the HUD. Get the fucking HUD off the screen. You cannot have a scary game with a fucking HUD. Even Dead Space knew that shit. Bottom line, this game just fucking sucked. I was hoping it'd be a return to form for Resident Evil, but all in all, it's just more of the same garbage. Capcom really needs to get their act together because you can't keep writing the same titles over and over and over again, especially if you're spitting on the old fans. 2013's Tomb Raider. Man, I was so pumped for this game. It was going to combine everything we knew and loved from Lara Croft with our main man from Uncharted. And on top of that, we were going to figure out how she became what she was. No butler locking in the freezer, no jumping around with tigers, just Laura, survival, bam, magic. That was what I was expecting. Re-entering Laura's world as she's still learning her true potential was so intriguing, but separating the story and the gameplay is Tomb Raider's #1 flaw. The gameplay is smooth, the story is passable, it's definitely not the best Tomb Raider experience you're gonna find out there, because it's just not very memorable. Laura may have been the queen of the grand explorative adventures, chased by all and surpassed by few, but then a new kid came along. And that kid brought all his flavor in, and that is Nathan Drake. This game screams Uncharted, not as much as an homage as just a cheap copy. The difference between Nathan Drake and Lara Croft is that Drake is a swarmy, lovable dick that you just like because he's unbelievably arrogant with a side of charisma. Laura has one note the entire game, and that is scared little girl. While being an origin story, there is no logical growth progression of the character. Did I want to see Laura save the day? Not as much, I just didn't want to see her die anymore. The game never gave me the opportunity to connect with the character. Instead, I felt like her father, just reminding her, hey, Laura, fire's hot and don't get too close to the guy with the big sword, honey. While no means superfluous, the character development sections just kinda leave you wanting more as time passes. Initially, they do a fantastic job showing Laura dealing with the ever-changing world of the island, but at about the 2-hour mark of hard-nosed killing, the writers kinda forgot that she crossed paths with over 100 people. Still depicting Laura as fragile and innocent at this point should have been non-existent. For games like this, it's all about a remarkable story, camp value, or gameplay, which Tomb Raider hits none. After exploring the meanderingly linear world of this island, this tomb is one I will not be rating again anytime soon. It is bland. It is disappointing. It unfortunately doesn't even hark back to the old Tomb Raider. It's nothing but a carbon copy of a much, much better game. You, Tomb Raider, get the most disappointing game of 2013 by me, Crimson Red. I hope you're happy with yourself. Well, that's gonna do it for our most disappointing games of 2013. Hope you guys enjoyed my list, agreed with me, and if you didn't, I'm sure you'll leave me a comment below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on the next list where we crown our real Game of the Year. Take it easy.